We sat here some while ago talking about the world of conveyancing. Since then, I've completely rebranded the company and lost the beard, and Robert has changed the company he works for and is now a father. Let's discuss what incredibly dynamic changes have also happened in the world of conveyancing since then. Welcome to the Sunday Property Breakfast podcast, brought to you by Adrian and Candice at Anderson Jones. Every week we'll be discussing a different property market topic, and don't forget the regular Sunday Property Breakfast every Sunday at 10 a.m. on Facebook. Welcome to the Sunday Property Breakfast podcast special, which is all about the world of conveyancing. And Robert, you are honoured to be the first returning guest.
Shocking.
Yes, it is shocking.
You must be desperate.
Yeah, well, I was looking at it two ways. Either we're, desperately finding it difficult to get other people to join us, or you were just so good first time round.
Let's go with the latter. We'll take the latter.
I'm definitely going with the latter. How are you?
Fine, thank you, AJ. Yourself?
I'm very well indeed. So, a very quick question. Has anything changed in the conveyancing world since we last met?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
It's a political answer.
Thankfully, there's a yes in there, so the podcast can continue.
We look forward to it.
No, we'd have been out of this building in a very quick space of time. Quite a lot has changed in the world. We talked about our own worlds. Congratulations on being a father.
Thank you.
Nearly 1 year old, Henry.
Shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Where does that time go? We've rebranded. Everybody's heard enough about that. They're bored about that. And most people are happy to see the beard has gone. And you're now with Parfitt Cresswell.
Yep.
And I know that from discussions with you, very happy there and a really great firm to work for as well. We've had changes of government. We've had a variety of different things talked about, some being implemented, some not. So I thought it was worthwhile just having a look at it's a funny thing. Your yes and no answer is quite interesting. Has anything changed? Not really. Is anything potentially changing? Wow, yeah, there's a whole load of things in the mix. So I thought that
could have a new prime minister again soon. Who knows?
Well, who knows? Yes, that's we won't go down that route.
No, we won't go down that's a different podcast.
Yes, it is a different podcast, and probably not one for property. I am not called Peston or Koonsberg or whatever. Anyway, so last time we touched on more the idea of lack of preparation.
Yep.
Jokingly referring to the fact that if you were my cab driver taking us on holiday, it would be incredibly well prepared.
Yes.
But weirdly, if you were selling my house, and most people, it's like, oh, Robert, just get on with it and don't give you anything to work with. We also discussed about difficult relationships between agents and solicitors, sellers and buyers and solicitors, and indeed solicitor to solicitor. Mm-hmm. On that relationship side, has anything materially changed, do you think, in the last
Unfortunately
year or so?
not. No, it's still pretty much the same as it has been. There's still shall we say, a bi-party transactional nature. The agent you're going to use to sell your house or buy your house, fine, they'll instruct, you instruct them. It's then a question of go and find your lawyer. It's getting better, admittedly. A lot of the estate agents through education are sort of realising that you need to get your lawyer onboarded sooner rather than later.
That may be, of course, the education of the previous podcast.
Absolutely.
Where we talked about getting legally prepared.
It could go viral.
I thought it did. Viral by comparison to
there's a small increase in the amount of people that are coming to us now saying, I've just recently gone on the market. And I would say out of every 50 cases, 5 are like that. But the other 45 are still, I've sold my house, now I need to do something.
So 90% of cases that you're seeing as a credible law firm, and I mean that in the sense that, yes, you're not the only credible law firm, but you're not, dare I say it, a bucket shop solicitor, conveyancer. So as a credible law firm, about 90% of your instructions or potential instructions are coming from people who said, I've now got a buyer for my house.
Yes, the first we hear about it is when the memorandum of sale arrives from you folks, the agents, saying the sale is agreed, let's go. Or the purchase is agreed.
I'm pleased to say ours is probably almost flipped completely the other way around, that we probably only have 10% of our vendors who, in spite of encouragement and coercive and duress, still don't choose their lawyer, but probably know that they need to and have probably in the background done a bit of prep, even if they haven't actually appointed. That alone is quite a shocking statistic. When, for me and for you, several weeks down the line, that seller will be telling you, why is this taking so long?
Exactly.
I said, well, you could have actually saved 2 or 3 weeks at the beginning.
Why is it taking a month for my paperwork to go out?
Yeah.
Well, I waited 3 weeks for you to complete it.
Yeah. That's disappointing, because the problem is we could be that 90% prepared, but if somebody in the chain is 10%,
can only go as quickly as the slowest link in the chain.
Yes, so that does disappoint me. Are agents as great with solicitors as they always were?
They're getting better. So following, shall we say, the stamp duty changes that was COVID back 5 years ago, and the recent one we had back in earlier this year, the relationships are getting better, especially if you have a decent estate agent, present company accepted, of course. But there is still a very much, you still get the bucket shops who don't, we said this earlier, there's the lack of understanding on the part of the public, the estate agents, the mortgage brokers. And it's never going to be fixed because people, A, don't want to fix it and also don't have the desire to fix it.
So the call from the agent after the sale is tied up is more, where have we got to, rather than
how can we help you?
And that, I know that I've often said to you, what can we do to help? And we say that within our transactions. A lot of the time there's nothing we can do.
Nope.
But often what it is, well, could you actually call the client to get in touch with me? I've just got one point that they haven't answered. So there is still that help.
The majority of emails or calls I get from estate agents is, can I have an update, please?
Yeah, can I have an update?
And it's the update that I gave you a week ago because I told you what was outstanding and nothing's changed.
Rather than them helping you. Yeah, okay.
Now, you might then get the response, oh, okay, I'll follow that up. Great.
And solicitor to solicitor?
Okay.
Protocol means you can't answer that question.
The situation that we've got is, I think, since 2020, so 5.5 years ago, 6 years ago almost, there has been a mass exodus of conveyancers from the industry.
Why is that?
I think burnout, mental health, and also people have realised that actually the conveyancing industry is not one that they necessarily want to go into. I mean, you had the stamp duty change back in July 2020 when COVID finished. There was a mass influx of work coming in to beat that deadline. And I think people just had enough and said, you know what, stuff it. I can earn my money elsewhere with less stress.
And was that actual conveyancers or was that the administrative people working?
I believe both.
Both. Because I can understand why the administrative staff who are critical to what you do
100%.
say, you know, if I am at the end of the day administrative, I don't need to take this brief and I'll be an administrator in another field. I get that. But you think you know that the conveyancers have left as well.
And I think there's so much more regulation now, the anti-money laundering rules, the onus on the individual lawyers themselves, there's so much red tape. And I think people have just gone, this isn't what I signed up for.
I get that.
And the situation you've got the natural wastage of retired or solicitors nearing retire or conveyancers nearing retiring age, but the cohort, the juniors, aren't coming through.
I hear that in a lot of different industries. We touched on earlier about the building industry.
Yeah.
How you can sort land and planning.
But the builders aren't there to build the houses.
Build it. Yeah. And that the average age of a lot of construction workers is really quite high in this country as well. Yeah. So I don't think you're alone in that field. No. So that's not painting the greatest picture. So let's see if we can liven this up a little bit.
Positive thoughts.
One thing that has changed. So we've had a change of government, and this is not a political statement at all. This is just the fact that the new government have got quite a few new ideas that they're bringing in, or wanting to bring in.
Yeah.
But you pointed out to me a while back that there's actually some things that have already been passed.
Yes.
Which I haven't yet been.
Nope. Still
they're on the statute book.
Gathering dust on the shelf.
Do you want to just enlighten me and others on that?
We all remember Rishi's wash-up when he sort of stood there in July last year saying, I'm calling a general election in the pouring rain, which sort of summed up his last few months of tenure. But important in that was part of his wash-up period, the Leasehold and Reform Act of 2024 was put through finally. The Conservative administration promised leasehold reform.
Yes. And
within their dying days introduced it. And that introduced 4 main points. And one was the abolition of the marriage value. Marriage value is when a lease drops below 80 years, the freeholder is entitled to a calculation on property value, and not a surveyor. So that's a whistle-stop tour of it.
Yeah.
The second one was that it abolished the 2-year wait for a statutory lease extension.
Yes.
Third was it abolished most of the sales of new leasehold houses, subject to some exceptions.
Yes.
And the final one was extending the 90-year plus unexpired term to 990 years. So you could get longer leases.
They're all on the statute book.
All on the statute books. Out of those 4, only the abolition of the 2-year wait rule has actually come into law. And that was of January this year.
And if that was made law, as opposed to just on the statute book, which to a lot of people is a bit of an anathema anyway. An easy word for me to say. I've got it out there.
Glad you got your teeth in.
I'm not going to repeat it. What difference would that make if those... And presumably that switch could just be flicked quite quickly to say all
it needs is for government minister to say, as of 1st of October 2025, X and Y are coming in.
Right. And what impact would that have on the conveyancing property market?
An increased one. I've got a few matters at the moment where clients are wanting to do lease extensions or wanting to sell leasehold properties or even buy leasehold properties, and they don't know whether or not they should do because they don't know when this law is going to come in.
Yeah.
And why would you suddenly go out and pay £20,000 on a lease extension today when next month you could have saved yourself $10,000 and pay half of that? At the same time, why would you pay $10,000 now and then work out actually you're in a worse off position? So, the clients come to me and say, "What should I do, Robert?" I can't tell you.
You can't give advice.
I can say this is what the law is, but your situation is not my situation.
I think we're not going to talk about Renters' Rights Act or Renters' Rights Bill and Act because it's a lettings thing, which isn't really today's discussion. But I think we could end up with a similar situation 100%. There, that it does get put onto the statute book this autumn. I think that will happen, and it will become law in spring. But I have a feeling that the month of July and August may be considered spring by the time it comes to next year. I may be wrong, but I just sense that we could have that
but there,
same
as you say,
hiatus.
My sort of opinion, and speaking to colleagues and other, shall we say, stakeholders in the profession, is that it's all very well trying to reinvent the wheel, and this is regardless of if it's purple, pink, blue, green party in Downing Street. But can we focus on what's already in place and get that in?
Yes.
And then focus on something new, because otherwise you're just going to end up kicking the can down. And common hold introduction, things like that, will be great for the people buying new properties, but there are 19 million leaseholders in this country. And what you're going to, the common hold's not going to affect them.
Yes.
You need to sort them out before the new stuff.
And we touched last time on land registry delays, and I think we even discussed this outside of the podcast through social media in our own discussions, that there are still quite big land registry delays.
100%.
Which, again, is a resource issue, which, again, probably isn't going to be resolved overnight, but that is causing practical delays for you.
Yeah. I've got clients and I've got matters of mine. I've got colleagues of mine. I mean, one colleague in particular is a female residential property lawyer. She's gone on maternity leave twice now, and she's still waiting for applications that she submitted before she went on her first maternity leave.
Wow.
And her eldest daughter is 3.5. So that's 3.5 years or even 4 years of delay.
And that's just an admin. That isn't a contentious legal point.
No,
which comes back to, again, some of the discussions we had about sales that fall through or take a long time. It's very rare that there is a legal point at the heart of it that becomes a point of conflict and no resolution.
And if there is a legal point, more often than not, decent lawyers can be resolved.
Get your teeth into it and think, I've actually got something.
Actually do law. This is actually what we're trained for.
Yes.
So more often, again, 9 times out of 10, there isn't something that can't be resolved, and there isn't anything detrimental that says thou shalt not buy this property.
If you held the magic button of resolution of this,
tempting.
It would be tempting. I'm worried actually about giving you that button. If we jointly had the button,
I'm not Donald Trump, don't worry.
If you had that idea, because what I sense from our discussions inside and outside of these podcasts is that, and this is again probably a familiar theme to a lot of people like yourself having to deal with it aren't being consulted.
No.
And there are big ideas of change. Again, whether they're right or wrong, that's not the case. That's not the issue.
No.
And if something's not working, we need reform. Whether that reform is right or wrong is a separate point.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, in quite a lot of this, there's a lot of things we could do now quite quickly
Speak to the miners on the coalface.
To make it, you were a cab driver last time.
I'm
Now you're a miner.
But there was a prime example earlier this year. The Law Society was going to introduce a new property information form.
Yeah.
And the current property information form is 16 pages. And it's long-winded, don't get me wrong, 16 pages, and asks 20 odd questions. The new one that they introduced was 32 pages. So double, and also asked a lot more questions. Now, this goes back to the point that the new information form it's mightily more important that you get legal support at the outset to complete this form, because it asks so many more questions. The problem is, though, and this is the Law Society, is in our own regulatory body and our own body that represents the solicitors in this country. And I hasten to add, I'm not a solicitor, but that's a different story. They didn't consult anybody. They just said, we are introducing this form because there is this trade directive that's come in, and therefore this information needs to be provided. They sent this form out, and all the residential conveyancers were up in arms and said, we're not using this because you haven't consulted us, and we're not happy to open our clients up for liabilities on these questions. The form's now gone back to the Law Society, and there was a massive consultation that ended earlier this year, and we're waiting to hear whether or not, well, we've heard now that the new form is being tinkered with.
Okay.
And we have been told that, again, a consultation will be a draft form will be sent out and saying, this is what we've amended. What do you think? But it was only after there was so much stink that they said, oh, actually, no, we've done the wrong thing here. And that's the Law Society. That's not central government, but one compounds the other.
It does sometimes seem from a distance, when you're really involved in it, there are moments, and I think this goes for a lot of the things we deal with. When you're really involved in it, you sometimes think, how do we get out how do we resolve it? And then when you just have that moment when you're walking the dog, or just, you
have that epiphany.
You just suddenly sort of think, if only we did such and such and such and such, we could not solve the big picture. But do you sometimes think that is the focus?
Yeah, I do.
Let's do a radical change of property law and not say, well, let's just sort a few things out.
No, it's the property industry in this country and the conveyancing industry is antiquated. I'm going to be the first to hold myself up for that. And there are still situations whereby, you're emailing contracts to clients and they're going, well, can I WhatsApp it back to you, or can I scan it back to you?
Yes.
No, sorry, your mortgage deed needs to be signed in person, in ink, with a witness.
Yes.
Well, why? Well, this is 2025. Well, I can't give you a reason why. That's just the reason. I mean, the reason is it's a deed, therefore it needs to be witnessed.
Yes.
But I can't tell you why this is still the case in 2025, when actually, if you were buying a house in 1825, it would be exactly the same situation.
Yes. Because we're just introducing the new Dominus platform within the business, which we will then, as a separate thing, take out to other agents. And although we can absolutely see the benefit of it, we know that there's going to be resistance from the most important stakeholders are agents and solicitors. There's various others. There are brokers. They are probably the third.
Yep.
And then everybody right down to removal companies.
Yeah.
Because, when it comes to exchange and trying to agree the completion date, one of the biggest logistics about that, apart
sorting
from
out your removals,
holidays, is actually, can I get removals for that day? Or can all 3 or 4 parties get removals? So they become a latter important stakeholder. But we can already see resistance from people with their own systems and their own CRM models and everything else saying, I don't need another one. I don't need another one. And I think that is all part of that resistance to change. I think it's all part of most businesses are run relatively lean. And the idea of introducing a new system that people have got to learn and got to train for is like, we haven't got the time to do that. We're going to carry on with what
And as humans, we naturally don't like change.
No,
we like our comfort blanket.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes, I mean, I'm not one for reformation. I'm not one for down with the monarchy and things like that. You know that from conversations we've had outside this room. But I think there does need to be a sort of a stop button where they say, right, going forwards, this is the situation. And that is coming, but it's not coming quick enough.
Excuse me. We've got digital conveyancing.
We have
is again being quite heavily talked about again as an objective, which I think has got to be a good idea.
Yeah.
There's an argument to say that a wet signature witnessed by somebody is far less authentic than many of the other things that we do to sign documents now, and with retina scanning and all those other things that are way above my head. That's surely more authentic than, I'm sure it's been done plenty of times where the witness isn't really there and the person actually signing it, isn't it? Not out of any attempt to
defraud or anything,
just because he wasn't there and I needed to get it back.
Or the client didn't read the letter that says you must sign this in the presence of a witness.
Yes, yeah. So anything that can, it can improve that. And again, I'm sure that's the new fighting with the old. One question I was wondering, within your transactions that you deal with, what proportion of the conveyances you deal with are what I would call a proper conveyance? So it doesn't necessarily need to be a high street, because there are, like agents, not everybody's in a high street. There are some brilliant agents, hopefully ourselves included, who are not necessarily sat in a high street, but they are what you'd call a proper setup.
Traditional, yeah.
How many, as a rough stab in the dark, are being handled by firms similar to yourself? And how many are being handled by
I'm fairly lucky.
I hate the word bucket shop, but you know what I mean, by a purely
cash and carry.
So a purely online, you'll never get to talk to the lawyer.
I'm fairly lucky. The firm that I'm with now in Windsor, we've got decent clientele. And that's the same for the home counties generally. So I would say that probably 85 to 90% is with a traditional set on the other side. You can tell when there is not a traditional set on the other side because you cannot speak to the same person twice. So, but luckily for me and for my clients and other stakeholders, that's in the minority. But you can tell when it happens because does it happen?
And presumably, by the natural law of a chain of value, sometimes when you get lower value,
then you get that.
People not aware of what a conveyancing lawyer can really do for you.
Yes.
Just see it as, well, they can do it for that figure, not that figure. So you then end up with one person in the chain being weaker. And as we've discussed before, you're as quick as the weakest link.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's so many matters that I've been on the top of the chain of. And the first time buyer, through no fault of their own, is using the cheaper option, and quite rightly so, because money is tight. People, you're a first-time buyer, you've only got so much to your name. But when the exchanges happen and you're not hearing from the bottom of the chain because the file's with sign-off, and you're waiting 2 weeks for sign-off, doesn't wash, because by that point, you could have completed in that time, and your removal company that your clients have booked have now solved elsewhere.
We've had exactly that issue where 3 people in a chain have penciled in the date, yep, and then we've waited several days, by which time those dates have started all over again. And, for the majority of properties around £1 million, I would say the average chain is probably at least 3 properties, typically.
At least, yes.
If I've got a first-time sale at 300-ish, and 1 or
3,
2,
6, 9, 2,
1 or 2 somewhere in the middle. Yeah, that doesn't make things very easy. I'm trying to find some good news on, and I do sense there is a will from all those involved to try and improve it.
Yes.
I just think the way it's being attempted may not be right. And again, that's not a political comment. That is just because nobody's got it right in the last however many years. And of course, so many things change in the way we operate and electronic media and everything else. That means, we can now do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, we've, following COVID, I hate to keep on going back to it, but back in the day, I've been doing this for 14, 15 years now. And back in the day, you used to have to get your clients in to do their ID checks with their original documentation. You'd have to sit them in the boardroom, stamp it and everything.
Yes.
You've now got electronic search providers that do all that. So the clients can do that from the comfort of their own home. Yeah. So you've already taken that out of it. So there are other things that are coming through. And, AI, we haven't even discussed AI, and that's a different ball game altogether. But AI in conveyancing, or if not the law full stop, is going to be a tool for not just the law, for everything. So I think let's see what the next, I don't want to say 15 years, because that's a very worrying thought that I'll still be here in 15 years' time and sort of we'll be having this conversation again.
It's even more worrying for me at my age.
But let's see what
I'll be sat in a bath chair.
Let's see what the next 15 months bring. And I think, as a sort of important point I was making first, try not to reinvent the wheel straight away. Let's sort out, think of it like a car. You mentioned the cab thing earlier. Your car's got a flat battery. You're not going to go and waste money putting new alloys on it to drive it around if you haven't fixed the battery first, because you can't drive it anywhere.
Great analogy. I like that.
There you go. One from your cab driver.
Yeah. That's going to end up being a clip from this podcast about cab driver's now talking about his alloys. Robert is a conveyancer, by the way, just in case you think that my cab driving alloy wheel supplier is here under false pretenses. We could have touched on quite a few other details about common hold. I don't like to date this too much, but right at the moment there is talk about big reform of stamp duty.
Yes.
That's for a separate discussion. But again, that does arguably become far more political, because that's not about conveyancing, that's about taxation, which is a far more political point. But is there anything that you would leave as a message to buyers and sellers, potential buyers and sellers, about how they can help weave through this sticky, problematic path that we've just discussed?
Goes back
for
to
the
the point that we
minutes.
said at the previous podcast: get legally prepared. Nobody wakes up this morning thinking, I'm going to sell or buy my house. You put thought into it. You get the estate agent round. You get it staged. You get it photographed. Don't leave it to the last minute, and don't be one of those people that's rushing around because the agent's saying to you, you've got a buyer, or you've had your offer accepted. Who are you using? And you need to let us know by the end of today, because you're not going to get the best value. And what value is for one person isn't value for another. And yes, value can mean pounds, shillings, and pence. Value can also mean quality of service. But get legally prepared. Get ducks in a row first. If you're buying, you've spoken to your mortgage broker, or you've spoken to your bank manager if you can find a bank. But you know what your finances are. You know what you can afford. Put the same diligence into choosing your conveyancer. And you doesn't have to be me at Parfits. It can be anybody who does conveyancing. It's got to be right for you. But please get organised first.
And if I was selling my house, and I had listened to myself telling me to get legally prepared, there's a strange out-of-body experience. So I contact 2 or 3 agents. Mm-hmm. I decide, Robert, I would like you to sell my house to me convey my house to me when I've found my buyer. What does that actually mean that you need from me?
So get onboarded, supply them with your ID. I would send you our client care letter, or letter of engagement, and the rest of the documentation that you need to fill out, the property information form. And I would say, right, Adrian, when did you last have your boiler serviced? Gives you time to go and find when Jack the plumber came round.
Okay.
What fences have you maintained? Oh, well, the back fence blew over 6 months ago in the last storm, but I repaired it. Okay, we'll tick that in the form. Get all your paperwork. You're going to have the paperwork there. And if you don't have the paperwork there, it gives you time to then find it. The last thing you want to do is to say, well, I had a new roof, and then wait 6 weeks to go and find the invoice from the roofer who subsequently has gone out of business because he's gone bust.
Fence certificates, boilers, all these things that will eventually come up as an inquiry.
Yep. Preempt it. Because if you can preempt it, my quickest exchange I've had to date has been a week from sending the papers out. I think the papers got sent out on a Friday, and we exchanged on a Friday afternoon, and we exchanged contracts the following Friday at lunchtime. Because my clients, through a pragmatic agent, it wasn't yourself, but it was another, shall I dare say it, Keller Williams agent. So again, has already, so we're sort of going back into history there. But, everything was legally prepared because the clients had prepared, and the agent and I had prepared the client saying, right, this is what you need to supply. There you go. And when the inquiries came, it was literally, can you confirm this? Can you confirm that? Yes, no, right, we're ready to exchange. Thank you very much. It can be done.
Yeah. And again, even if there's money involved, the legals can still be sorted.
Yeah.
Even if there have to be surveys and, mortgages.
Yeah.
At least get the legals sorted.
Yeah. You should have all the information there because it's your house. Now, okay, if you're an attorney sale, if you're a probate sale because you're selling because Great Aunt Mabel's popped it, fine, I get that.
Yeah, and that's a completely separate purchase side of it as well, And again, selling those, you have to say to a buyer, by the way, been lived in for 40 years.
It's not going to have all
even
this.
Though the children lived here, they couldn't tell you anything about what's been done to it. And the buyer, you have to take that on board. That's just the nature of probate sales.
Yeah.
But again, it's quite a lot of them, but that is by no means, the majority of sales. Robert, thank you for that.
Thank you.
You will return for a third one whenever
third
we
time's
feel.
a charm.
Well, yes, it's whenever we feel there is something really pertinent to talk about conveyancing, because there are other really good conveyancers, that.
Absolutely.
Although you are a very, very good one. But the thing I like is you're very good at actually just getting to the heart of, I really wish we could do this and really wish we could do that, which is not always something that everybody can do. So I really, really appreciate the fact you can turn what could otherwise be a whinge into something. We made sure that this wasn't a big whinge, everybody.
Stay tuned for the next podcast for that one.
Yes. So thank you as always for watching the Sunday Property Breakfast. Thank you, Robert, again for joining me, and we'll see you again soon. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Sunday Property Breakfast podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. Please feel free to share it with anyone you know who you think might enjoy listening in. And if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer directly, then just email hello@andersonjones.co.uk. See you next week.